Well, thank you, and I am sorry for this small delay in the start. We are at this moment talking into the DCF group about physical security a little bit. I'll try to show you a little bit what we're doing there. I have a co-lead with me in the work stream. He was not able to join today, unfortunate. He is my actually master Jedi on that, on physical security, Cliff Jones from Meta. Actually, I'll tell you a short story about it. Like a year ago, maybe a year ago or something, in one of the DCF meetings we had, the discussion brought up by Facebook, by the time Facebook, now Meta, it was that, we're seeing this trend of like physical security and threats to physical security or security as a whole, right, into IT and OT space being like a big issue for us in the long run. And we need to address that. We need to anticipate those trends and address that. So what you see on the screen here is like the problem statement that we actually, created from that conversation. And we decided to create this mission statement, which is basically saying like that the devices and systems, that control the data centers, they're under threat. And the threat actually is evolving with the industry as a whole. So we cannot, mitigate these threats if we don't actually work on those right now. And that was what we started to talk about. That actually led us into conversations in more details, and we created 3 different work streams. One of them was for IT and logging monitoring that is actually led right now by Ehen. And the other one is like communications, led by Steve from Facebook. And one of the questions I raised was like, okay, what about the envelope? What about what happens in the physical structure of the data center? Do we address issues related to those? And you saw my colleague here just doing a presentation about physical security at Google, right? And one of the trends is like, we need to address some of these things in the right way. We need to anticipate these trends. And then we said, okay, what is going on in the industry right now? It's like, there's a big convergence between IT and OT. We don't know what is going to happen with that. We don't know what kind of threats we're going to face. We don't have the tools yet to actually address those, and we need to start dealing with it. And then physical security is not even considered right now. We deal with physical security to an extent that everything is ready, and then we try to figure out what's going on in the asset after it's built. Right? And then you can see like the existing approach for that was always like, networking communications, device authentication, monitoring, device management. And the last item of the spreadsheet was physical security. I raised that concern during one of our calls, and then we all said, oh my gosh, it makes total sense, right? We need to take care of that. And that happens in every single dimension that you can possibly imagine. I'll take you a deeper thought into that. And we're always saying like, okay, what is critical in security, right? IT, OT, blah, blah, blah. And then everything actually was more or less into those dimensions. And then we started looking to like physical security. First of like, let's look at the infrastructure itself, a little bit of what actually entails by infrastructure. So some definitions. We started from the very basic foundations of physical security. We went through like definitions what the physical security for data centers and mission critical facilities is. Up to a point that we started dig deeper into like what is the perimeter problems that we might have, what are the other equipment problems that we might face. If we don't address these issues with the infrastructure, what happens then? I brought up a case where one of the hyperscalers were having issues with rodents getting into conduits, and you might think that is come on. That's not a security threat. It is, because it's going to shut down your entire facility because of that. And you can protect that, right? And then there's another trend out there called HEMP, AGMP, which is high altitude electromagnetic pulse. A lot of the substations, they have to be hardened actually to cope with that in the United States. What happens with, data centers, right? What happens if we have a drone that actually comes up with an electromagnetic pulse gun and actually, boom, shut it down a bunch of servers there. So you might have a problem with that. So we have to harden this infrastructure facilities. And then we look into one dimension, which is like space first. And we said, okay, if we start looking into the site selection, so it's land, infrastructure of the land, everything that surrounds the building, right? And you go deeper into the perimeter and then the building itself, and you go outside in up to the, data halls and also the racks and the most granular level, which is the piece of equipment. And again, that under this conceptual framework of security where deterrence, detection, delay, response is the drive that that would actually help us achieve what we would like to. So basically, if you look at this dimension and you go to the second stage of it, which is like time. So instead of just looking at the data center when the asset is done and you try to protect it, let's look into all the steps related to the construction of that facility. I mean, on early stage design, like the feasibility design, up to like the planning, construction, design, build, operate, assess, and actually scrap, kind of like the building, right? So the entire life cycle of the building has to be considered under this physical security conceptual framework that we're creating. But keep in mind what we're doing in this work stream, it's basically creating guidelines, not standards or specifications. It's just providing guidelines that will allow the entire construction business to actually entail all the aspects from physical security for the hyperscalers. I think it was Rob that actually mentioned that construction has been the same for 100 years. Yes, I have to agree 110% with that. The way construction is done does not consider any of those aspects. I'll give you a good example. What happens with the blueprints, that circulates within a site that's being built? Those blueprints, they run from hand to everyone. Contractors, subcontractors. What happens with those? Do you think your facility is safe because you're protecting your IT, OT equipment only? Do you ever consider taking care of like what's going on in the construction site? That's what we're trying to come up with here. And we're more or less changing the car tire with the car moving. So it's basically, as the industry evolves, the threats evolves, we need to address those by, doing it at the same time. So this is basically what the life cycle entails. And then we came up with this more in-depth framework. We're just starting. We're here to recruit you actually to help us and develop that. So basically right now we don't have like physical security out of the scope anymore. This holistic view will actually encompass physical security, information security, and network security. So it's the third dimension that was missing in this whole scope that we're trying to actually set up the guidelines right now. And within this group, we're just starting. I mean, we're setting up the groundwork for actually creating the physical security guideline work stream. And how do we want to apply for that? It's basically, creating these guidelines so you guys can actually help us with the specs later on. We need to educate the industry as well, like the engineers, the contractors, the subcontractors, the general contractors on how to address those issues. And oh my gosh, yeah. And I think the industry will benefit from that as a whole. What I would like to do then is like invite you that are out there within OCP. We need more volunteers to actually help us build this work stream and set up those guidelines as fast as we can, because the industry is like faster than ever. The construction pace is like faster than ever. We need to speed that up. And if you want to get involved, it's easy. Just reach out to Joey. Joey Arado is like the co-lead of the OTS subgroup at DCF. Get involved with the meetings. You can join. You don't have to be a member. I think it was like Rob that mentioned that as well. You don't have to be a member to be part of it. Just join the calls, see what you can actually work on. Be a member later, and of course, help us build this this whole guideline going forward. I think that's pretty much it, right? Questions? Yep.
In your diagram that showed the kind of the third element that was missing from the security discussion, where does OT networks fall in that?
We're still trying to figure out like the scope. Like physical security can actually entail OT. A big portion of OT falls into that as well. You know, like big chunks of equipment, like, you know, generators outside and everything that actually surrounds the envelope might actually be considered part of the physical security. So we're trying right now to fine tune, because we cannot boil the ocean on this, right? Otherwise, nothing is going to be done. But the OT portion of it, we need the industry. We need inputs like from people like you, actually to help us define what is the ideal scope of this work, because there is some gray zones into that we cannot at this moment decide or at least give you a concrete answer, but we're working on it. We're still working on it. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you for that.